What is the best, baddest, buffest barbarian to bash in the brains of the bad guys in the most bona fide, brutal way possible? Well, I ran through tons of combinations, and I found the best answer. And it all starts with the most important choice of the entire build: the species. And there's tons of great options for making a barbarian when it comes to the species or race in Dungeons & Dragons. Dwarves get extra health, which is great for a barbarian. Aasimar get flying speed or some extra damage when they transform. But thanks to the Eberron Forge of the Artificer book, there's one perfect choice. And that's the shifter species. They get one feature that adds to a barbarian in multiple ways. So we'll cover that when we get to the important features of the barbarian, but I don't want to waste any more time because we want to start bashing people's skulls. So jumping over to the background, you just want to go with a farmer. It gives you two important parts, which is one, it boosts up the stats that you really need as a barbarian: strength and constitution. Second, it gives you the tough feat, giving you an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. And health in general for a barbarian is more important than most other classes, because it's almost twice as effective to have more health for a barbarian than it is for any other melee martial class. And that's because when you become a barbarian, you're going to choose some skills. Just grab athletics and perception. Those are going to be the most useful for any barbarian. But you get the all-important rage. Rage is the bread and butter of every barbarian. Except the bread is actually solidified hatred, and the butter is actually jam made from the bashed in brains of your enemies. As a barbarian, you can use your bonus action to activate a rage, and when you do so, that health is more important because you get damage resistance. When you're raging, you get resistance to every type of normal damage. So if it's not elemental or pure magical stuff, you have resistance to it, meaning that you're taking half damage. So that health is twice as effective in those situations. This is also important because when you chose to be a shifter for your species, there's a feature that shifters get called shifting. Kind of fits with the name. You get to choose a type of shifting that you want to activate. We'll cover that in a second. You also get to shift as a bonus action, so make sure you activate your rage first and then shift on your second turn. When you shift, you gain temporary hit points equal to 2 times your proficiency bonus. And remember, that goes twice as far because you get damage resistance. You can make that go even further by choosing the shifting subtype Beast Hide. This will give you an additional 1d6 temporary hit points. And on top of that, it'll also give you a +1 bonus to your armor class. But you're only going to be using that when you need to be a little extra tanky. There's actually a better option, which we'll cover in a second. Also, when you rage, you get a rage damage bonus. So if you're doing damage with a strength-based weapon or an unarmed strike, you get to deal some extra damage when you do. It's a +2 early on, but it does go up as you level up in Barbarian all the way to a +4. You get one other advantage from being in Rage, and that's your strength advantage, meaning that you have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. The only downside of Rage is you can't cast spells or concentrate on spells, so you can't activate something and then go into battle concentrating on it. But if there is a buffing spell that doesn't require concentration, you can still use it. Also at first level of Barbarian, you get unarmored defense. So your armor class can be 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your constitution modifier. Most of the time, until you get to a very high level of constitution, it'll probably be better just to wear medium armor, because barbarians get access to light and medium armor. So that's what you're going to want to rely on if you want to optimize here. And I should note, you can still use a shield and use unarmored defense, or use a shield normally and still use everything else a barbarian can do. Then the last thing you get at first level of barbarian is a weapon mastery. You get it in 2 weapons. Now, I know that everybody kind of has this iconic thing in their head where a barbarian is using a great axe, and I get it. It seems cool, and it was the best choice in the original 5th edition of D&D, because you have this feature called Brutal Critical, where you can roll an extra dice when you scored a crit. And a great axe uses a D12, which is the largest damage dice you can have on a weapon. That's not the case anymore after 2024. They updated the Barbarian, they removed Brutal Critical for some other features that balance it out more than enough. So we still want to focus on really big weapons, but just not the great axe, because a great axe has a d12 for its damage die. On average, that means that the damage is 6.5. And anybody that pops up in the comments and asks, why isn't it 6 damage on average? Well, it's because you can't roll a 0 on your damage die. So the average actually comes out to half a point higher. But if you use other big weapons like a greatsword or a maul, which is basically just an enormous hammer, then you have 2d6. The average on a d6 is similarly going to be 3.5, but you're rolling 2 of them, meaning that on average you're doing 7 damage. You can round both of them up, meaning that you're actually doing 7 damage on average with the great axe and 8 damage on average with the other great weapons, but that still means on average you are doing 1 point more damage with other weapons. So that's what we're going to go with. And that doesn't even factor in the idea of weapon masteries, which even pushes things further that the great axe is the worst choice, because we get to choose 2 weapon masteries. So we're going to grab both the greatsword and the maul. The maul is actually our go-to weapon most of the time. Greatsword gives us the feature graze, so you have some guaranteed damage even when you miss. This is great for situations when you absolutely need to keep doing damage, but the chances we're going to miss consistently is a little more minimal. And the graze feature doesn't allow us to boost up the damage in any way. All it does is allow us to roll the damage die from our great axe, and that's it. And it only kicks in when we miss. A maul has massive benefits overall. First, it's a bludgeoning weapon. Bludgeoning damage is going to be the most effective type of damage to use, especially in early levels, but throughout most campaigns, because plenty of creatures have resistance to different types of damage, but some have vulnerabilities, and there is a higher percentage of creatures that have vulnerabilities to bludgeoning damage. Mostly because when you're fighting undead, it's better to crush their skulls than it is to cut at them. Thanks to having weapon mastery with a maul, you get the weapon mastery feature, Topple. So when you hit a creature with your maul, it has to make a constitution saving throw, which your strength modifier is going to get pretty high eventually. And if it fails, it's knocked prone. Prone is especially good because 1, they're laying down, so you have advantage on every attack against them, but so does every ally of yours that happens to be in melee. And on top of that, it cuts their speed in half, so it's harder for them to get away. And the final thing that I should note is that both graze and topple can be activated on every single attack, whereas the great axe's feature can only be done once per turn, because it has the cleave feature allowing you to hit an additional enemy within 5 feet of your original target. So again, that only kicks in once per turn, and it's only going to kick in when you're fighting multiple enemies right next to each other. So it is the inferior option here. Then once you get to 2nd level of Barbarian, you get Danger Sense, so you have advantage on dex saves when it comes to not taking damage from stuff. And then you get one of the most important features we need to really focus on, Reckless Attack. So with Reckless Attack, you can give all of your enemies advantage on attacks against you, which gives you advantage on all of your attacks until the start of your next turn. But because we chose the shifter species, we get a benefit that allows us to ignore the downsides of Reckless Attack while still gaining the benefits. Because while you can shift into a Beast Hide type of shifter, which gives you some temp HP and some bonus armor class, we don't really care that much about the extra armor class and health because we have a ton to spare. However, there is a different thing we can shift into, which is shifting into a Wild Hunt shifter. Shifting into the Wild Hunt version of the shifter gives us advantage on all wisdom checks, which is nice, I guess. It means that you're going to be better at perception checks. But the more important part is that while you're shifted into a Wild Hunt shifter, you no longer have any ability for an enemy to have advantage against you while you're not incapacitated. Meaning that when you're reckless attacking, they no longer have advantage against you. You just get advantage on everyone else without any downside. This only counts for enemies within 30 feet of you. but that's okay because that's going to cover the majority of the enemies you're going up against. So you just have to make sure you stay out of ranged attacks and try and get up close and personal to absolutely eviscerate your enemies, which is why the shifter is the absolute best species to choose, and it was one of the most important choices to make early on. And real quick, before I get any further into this build, if you want to follow along, all the character sheets are up on Patreon. It's very easy. You can sign up, check it out, download everything you want, and bail. It's got a free trial, or you could be super awesome, hang around and help contribute to this channel. Helps me do this stuff, but let's get back to the build. Then comes the next most important choice. The Barbarian subclass was one of the hardest things to run through when it came to optimizing this entire build. And that's because there's a lot of good choices. There's the standard stuff like the Wild Heart, which replaced the old Totem Warrior, and that gives you some additional resistances and some other bonuses which can be pretty useful at higher levels, but it's definitely not the optimal choice. In fact, the optimal choice comes down to whether you want to focus on tanking or whether you want to focus on an all-around good barbarian. Because I've said in many other videos, when it comes to tanking, one of the most important things is to make sure that the enemies stay away from your allies or you're protecting your allies in general. And there's two great subclasses for that, which there's a new one and an older one. A great choice on the newer side is going to be the World Tree Barbarian because they have some extended range for their attacks. They can move enemies in towards them, keeping them away from your allies, and they can boost up the health of your allies and teleport everybody away in an emergency situation. But you're a barbarian, you don't want to run away. The actual best tanking subclass is going to be the Ancestral Guardian, which came out in Sanithar's Guide to Everything. It discourages enemies from attacking your allies, it helps defend your allies against damage, and once you get to higher levels, it's even better because enemies that attack your allies, the damage gets reduced and damage is inflicted on your enemies. It's pretty darn good. However, when it comes to an all-around best choice, it's not about being a tank, it's just about being the best barbarian you can be. And that comes down to two choices. Either the Zealot Barbarian or the Berserker Barbarian. And I had to go through and check every single level of this. They have some similar features early on, with Berserker Barbarians getting Frenzy, giving them some bonus damage in the equivalent of a bunch of dice, and Zealot Barbarians getting some flat solid damage equal to 1d6 plus half their barbarian level. So I ran all the numbers, and it's actually a bit better on damage to go with Frenzy. Zealot Barbarians also get some additional health and healing themselves, but unless you have zero other ways to heal, as in there's no potions on you, and there's no other healer in your party, or somebody that can at least cast Healing Word, yeah, a Zealot Barbarian might be better in that situation. But otherwise, the Berserker Barbarian is better, until you get to very high levels, because at level 14, the Zealot Barbarian feature is way better, but most campaigns don't actually get that high, so I had to rate the earlier features more heavily. Berserker Barbarian is the best. That's just what it is. And it focuses in on what we're able to optimize even more, because Frenzy allows us to boost up Reckless Attack, and we're going to be able to use Reckless Attack without any restrictions constantly. And Frenzy is going to give us an extra d6 of damage per extra point of rage damage that we get. So that means right now with our +2 rage damage bonus, we get an extra 2d6 of damage once per turn while reckless attacking. That averages to 7 to 8 damage. But if we roll really well, that means an extra 12 damage. Once we get to that +4 in our rage damage bonus, that's going to be an extra 4d6, which is pretty darn solid. And we're going to be reckless attacking basically every turn. Also at 3rd level of Barbarian, you get Primal Knowledge, so you get an extra skill. Just grab Intimidation because it kind of fits character-wise. And then at 4th level of Barbarian, you get another Weapon Mastery. And again, instead of going with the giant Great Axe, we want something else that's going to help us a bit more. So go with a Warhammer instead. It gives us that bludgeoning damage we already talked about, and it gives us the Push Weapon Mastery feature, allowing us to push an enemy when we're attacking. We want this in our arsenal for any situation where you need a bit more defense. So a Warhammer allows you to grab it with one hand so you can have a shield on your other arm, just in case you really need some extra armor class. But again, your best defense as a barbarian is going to be that big pool of health that you have. So be willing to take the hits in exchange for dealing more damage with a big ol' weapon. And to focus on this even more, at 4th level barbarian, you get an ability score improvement. So we're going to take a feat and we're going to grab Great Weapon Master. There's no way you can go with a barbarian and not grab Great Weapon Master. First, it boosts up our strength by 1 point. So here's our starting stats. Obviously, we're min-maxed a bit. I didn't throw everything into dexterity because we don't really need it that much, and having 15 in dex wouldn't help us. So instead, I threw a couple extra points into wisdom just because it's more beneficial. Then, thanks to Great Weapon Master, we get 2 features. First, we get Heavy Weapon Mastery. So if you're attacking with a weapon that has the heavy property, you can deal extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus. You can do this on every single attack. And on top of that, you get the feature Hew. So if you wind up reducing a creature to 0 hit points, or you critically hit with a melee weapon, you get another attack as a bonus action. So you're going to be dealing extra damage with your rage damage bonus. You're going to be doing extra damage thanks to frenzy and attacking with reckless attack all the time. Then you're going to be doing extra damage because you're using a great weapon. So you have a good chance of taking an enemy to 0 hit points, getting an extra attack as a bonus action. But on top of that, if you wind up critically striking, which in general you have a 5% chance to critically strike on a d20 die, that means you have a 5% chance towards an extra bonus action attack even without taking an enemy down. But since you have reckless attack, meaning that you're rolling at advantage, that means that you have a slightly higher chance to critically strike. And you would think that that means it's doubling your chances, bringing you to 10%, but statistically it's actually 9.75% chance to critically strike. And that chance is about to go up because at 5th level of Barbarian, you get extra attack. So now you can attack twice per attack action, meaning that if you're attacking with advantage and you're attacking twice, the chances of getting a critical strike is actually 18.55%, meaning that you have a 1 in every 5.4 turns chance to critically strike most of the time, meaning that you're probably going to get another attack as a bonus action every one of those times. And if an enemy's trying to get away, you also get the feature Fast Movement, so your speed is boosted by 10 feet. 6th level of Barbarian, thanks to being a berserker, gives us Mindless Rage, so you can immediately not be mind controlled, which was a big problem for the Hulk, so it's good you get to avoid that, because you are immune to the Charmed and Frightened condition. This is another way you were actually better going with the Berserker than the Zealot Barbarian, because at this level, the Zealot Barbarian just got 1 extra chance every time they rage to re-roll a saving throw with a slight bonus to it. So overall, this is just pure immunity to some conditions versus 1 extra chance on a save. 7th level of Barbarian gives you Feral Instincts, so you have advantage on your initiative checks. 7th level of Barbarian also gives you Instinctive Pounce, so when you go into a rage as your bonus action, you can move up to half your speed as well. 8th level of Barbarian gives you another ability score improvement, so go ahead and max out that strength right away. 9th level of Barbarian gives us Brutal Strike. This is what replaced the Brutal Critical in the 5.0 edition. So if you use your Reckless Attack, you can give up advantage on your first attack. In doing so, as long as you don't then have disadvantage, you get an extra 1d10 of damage, and you get some crowd control you can add in by adding in Forceful Blow or Hamstring Blow. Forceful Blow pushes an enemy. Hamstring Blow slows them down. Then at 10th level of Barbarian, you get another Weapon Mastery. And come here. Just a little bit. I know I said that having a great axe was the worst option of the great weapons. So I'm not going to choose it again. And I don't want to go over it again. We have other options. So the only one I want to go with is one that helps us in another way. And that's by going with a glaive. Gives us reach, so we can reach our enemies further away, and it still gives us the Graze Weapon Mastery feature. I don't want to hear a bunch of people complaining that I didn't choose Great Axe. I understand how Great Axe works. I'm not choosing it. Okay? I'm sorry. And with that very important message out of the way, at 10th level of Barbarian, thanks to being a Berserker, you get Retaliation. This is going to be amplified again, because when you take damage from an enemy within 5 feet of you, you can now attack them back. You get to use your reaction to get an attack. That means that you, on average, are going to have at least 3 attacks per turn, because you're gonna be in melee. So that means that you're doing attacks with your action, doing 2 attacks. Then you either crit or you don't crit, or you take an enemy down. If you take an enemy down, then you get your extra attack as a bonus action. If you don't take your enemy down, then they're either going to hit you or run away. If they hit you, you get to retaliate with a retaliation. Or if they run away, you get an opportunity attack. Unless they use the disengage action, which is its own other problem, but that means they used up part of their action economy, so it's probably okay. So you are more than likely to have 3 attacks every single turn. And you can probably wind up with 4 as long as you get lucky on one of the first 2. And there's going to be some numbers I associate with those later, so keep those in mind. 11th level of Barbarian gives you Relentless Rage. Here is where it stops mattering as much to have so much health, because even if you go down, you can make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. And if you succeed, you go to an amount of health equal to twice your Barbarian level instead. And you can keep using this feature. The only downside is that once you use it once, the challenge of it goes up by 5 points. So that means the DC 10 becomes a DC 15, and it goes up by 5 every single time you use this, only resetting back to 10 once you do a short or long rest. But that doesn't mean Constitution's not important at all. You still want a bunch of health. You don't want to be using that all the time. So at 12th level of Barbarian, you get another ability score improvement. So go ahead and throw 2 points into Constitution, meaning that as of now, you're only 1 point less than the maximum armor value you can have without armor, thanks to your unarmored defense. So with unarmored defense, without a shield, you have 16 armor class. But if you have half plate, you have 17 armor class. The only downside is that you have disadvantage on stealth. So you have to weigh your options, but we're going to overtake that soon. 13th level of Barbarian gives us improved Brutal Strike. So if you use Brutal Strike, you got 2 new options. Staggering Blow, giving it disadvantage on its next saving throw, or Sundering Blow, giving your allies a bonus +5 to their accuracy for the next attack that hits that creature. But you definitely want to keep in mind Staggering Blow, because remember, the Maul gives us a topple effect, and topple relies on a Constitution saving throw. So if you wind up forcing them to have disadvantage on their next saving throw, you can knock them down much more easily. 14th level of Barbarian, thanks to being Berserker, gives us Intimidating Presence. This is the capstone of the Berserker, and frankly, this is the probably least helpful, which is a little unfortunate because it's a capstone, but it just gives you 1 chance to let out a 30-foot emanation from you, or area of effect. And you basically shout, intimidating enemies and inflicting fear. They make a saving throw, otherwise they're frightened for a minute, and they get to re-roll that save every single turn. So it's not a super powerful ability, but it can help, especially when it comes to battlefield control, keeping enemies away from your allies that might be a little squishier because they're silly little casters that use spells and stuff. You're a barbarian, you don't need any of that junk. 15th level of Barbarian gives you Persistent Rage, so once per long rest, you can refill all of your rage uses, and you have an easier time staying pissed off. Then at 16th level of Barbarian, you get another ability score improvement. So boost up your Constitution by 2 more points, meaning that now, unless you have magical armor, it's just as effective for you to walk into battle naked. 17th level of Barbarian improves your Brutal Strike again. So now the extra damage from Brutal Strike gets boosted to 2d10, and you can use 2 different battlefield control options at the same time. 18th level of Barbarian gives you Indomitable Might, so if you roll a strength check or a strength saving throw, and it's less than your actual strength score, which is 20, you can now just use your strength score instead, meaning that the chances of you failing a strength check or strength saving throw is pretty minimal. Then at 19th level of Barbarian, we get a very important choice, because we get an ability score improvement, but we can choose an epic boon because we're 19th level. So here's the thing. Obviously, health is very important for a barbarian. So a epic boon of recovery or fortitude would be especially helpful. Epic boon of fortitude gives us an extra 40 hit points, and the boon of recovery gives us some additional healing pretty easily. Most of those are mitigated by the fact that once we go down, we can just get extra health back automatically anyways. So that's either gonna give us a little bit longer before we go down, or give us 1 extra chance to come back, because one of those epic boons also gives us an extra chance to come back with half your health back. But there's something more important. We already have massive survivability. If you're going down at this point, most of your allies are already down. And while being the epic hero in the final last stand seems pretty cool, it's probably better just to kill your enemies. So what you want to take is the epic boon of irresistible offense. This will take our strength score and boost it to 21. That's going to actually be important even more in just a second. Then it gives us 2 features. The first is overcoming defenses, so you can ignore resistances of your enemies when it comes to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. But most importantly, you get the feature overwhelming strike. So when you roll a 20 on a d20 die for an attack roll, you do extra damage equal to your ability score. And listen carefully. I said ability score, not ability modifier. So that means that the 21 that you have in strength, you get to add 21 damage. I've gotten this wrong before. It is not the ability modifier, which would only be a +5. It is a plus 21 damage. And here's the numbers that make that more important. Because thanks to being a shifter and getting to always have advantage thanks to reckless attack without any downside, every roll that you have advantage on, you have a 9.75% chance to critically strike on, meaning that you're rolling a 20. You are rolling 2 attacks as your attack action, and you either take somebody down or critically strike on one of those, so you get an extra attack as a bonus action if that happens. If it doesn't happen, you still have your retaliation, which might give you a 4th attack, but at least a 3rd attack. Retaliation is going to allow you to attack anybody that attacks you. Or you can attack them if they try and run away without disengaging or any of that. So that means on average, you get at least 3 attacks. And if you have advantage on all 3 attacks, which you should have unless you're using your brutal strike feature, you have on average 26.49% chance to critically strike, meaning rolling a natural 20, meaning that you're going to get to add that 21 damage on a turn. But if you really get lucky and you can do your bonus action attack and your retaliation attack, or somebody tries to run away and you get an opportunity attack, that's 4 attacks and you get 33.66% chance to critically strike or roll a nat 20, adding that extra 21 damage. And that's just if it happens once, meaning that over a quarter of your turns, you are going to apply an extra 21 damage. And if you get lucky and are able to get an extra attack in there, then you have over a 1/3 of a chance to get an extra 21 damage. And it would be great to crit fish a bit and improve our crit range, but the epic boon is very specific that you have to roll a 20. But all of that gets even better because at level 20 of being a barbarian, you get primal champion, meaning that you get 4 more strength and 4 more constitution. So you now have 25 strength and 24 constitution. So your unarmored defense is even better and better than most armor you're ever going to come across. And your strength score is now 25, meaning that you have a +7 to every attack you're doing. That means every attack's accuracy and every attack's damage, meaning you're doing considerable damage and you're going to be attacking 3 to 4 times per turn. You're getting to add that extra 7 damage on every one of them. And on top of that, if you roll in at 20, which we already covered all those numbers, you're now not adding 21 damage, you're adding 25. That is 25 damage. 25 on a single strike, which is massive in D&D. That is fucking huge. And that's not even factoring in the fact that you actually are rolling more dice on this. If it happens on the first attack of your turn, if it's a brutal strike, that's an extra 2d10 that gets doubled into 4d10. And if it's on that first strike, that means your frenzy is getting activated. And that's an extra 4d6. Not to mention, if you're critically striking, that's another 4d6, meaning you get 8d6 from your frenzy ability alone. Add in your extra 25 strength, and holy shit, that's a lot of damage.
No, that's a lot of damage!
All because you wanted to be a buff barbarian and beat the shit out of your enemies. Sorry I'm a little hyped up. I was activating all the rage and drinking way too much caffeine, and I need to calm down a little bit. But if you wanted to access this build and any of my other builds, they're all available up on Patreon, where I have access to the character sheets for every single one of my builds in both D&D Beyond form and PDF form. So you can use them in any campaign you play. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially because if you do that as a barbarian in this build, you're doing a ton of damage.